on YouTube, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Welcome into the fourth Mother Box. I am your co-host, Tom Oakery, and joining me, as always, is Kyle Cosentino. Kyle, you're hailing from Chicago again today, correct?
I am actually hailing from Gotham City. Because
Gotham City.
We all know Batman Begins in the Nolan trilogy was filmed in Chicago. So,
Ooh,
AKA Gotham City.
nice segue. Very nice segue, because today we're talking about the Nolan trilogy. Yeah, but I'm still residing here in Phoenix for about another 64 days. I'll be able to say hailing from Orlando, Florida, but until then, I'll continuously be fighting off scorpions, rattlesnakes, and javelinas from stealing my beignets in the wild, wild west. See, Kyle, I was gonna tell everybody a fun fact about Chicago, Illinois, which is the only city that hands out 2 gallons of butter when you cross the state line. Did you know that? What the butter is supposed to be used for is beyond me.
I don't know. I think you just eat it like right away. I think that's what they expect. Most people in Chicago, they just eat it like hand. They just stick their hand in the tub and just eat it while in their car. So
Makes a lot of sense, actually, now that you think about it. But like I said, today we're going to talk Nolan trilogy. Kyle had mentioned, yes, Batman Begins being filmed in the city of Chicago, which is the perfect Gotham City that both Kyle and I could agree, since we're both hailing from that city. Not currently for me, but where I grew up. But today we're going to do a little deeper dive into the DC movieverse. And maybe we can include the Nolan trilogy officially into the official extended universe of DC, but there's really never been any connection hinted at that. So, but I do think the Flash movie is going to change that. But today we're specifically discussing Christopher Nolan directed Batman trilogy, which is Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. But first, let's do some news, rumors, and stuff we like to talk about. But before we get into that, Kyle, you already know the news that I'm going to share. And this news was officially shared on the Jedi Talk podcast, but the wildly popular Jedi Talk podcast. I will be joining as a co-host when I move out to Orlando officially for at least a little bit, coming up in around August or September. So real quick, I met Brad and Evan through the podcast, actually. I became a fan on social media. Was listening to it when I was really, really, really getting deep into the Star Wars background and lore and stuff. And I forgot more about Star Wars, or these two have forgotten more about Star Wars than I know, and I know quite a bit about it. So I'm excited to be able to join. These guys are awesome, exciting. And we'll be also able to plug, and I'll be able to defend DC movies as I don't know if you saw on social media, Kyle. Brad is not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder, so I get to be able to defend our Lord and Savior.
good, you should.
And I will. So let's kick it off with some DC news. So my guy, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, has shared a couple of first looks at his current project that's in production, none other than Black Adam. Not only did he share a picture of the ancient temple, but like literally moments later, The Rock dropped an exclusive first look at Black Adam, which was so cool, just very subtle, draped in just a black robe and black and gray. The Rock continues to promise a power shift in the DCEU, and I'm ready for it. Not to mention, there are strong, strong, strong rumors The Rock is a big Zack Snyder guy and he wants to restore the Snyderverse. Kyle, how would you hype your excitement level for Black Adam?
You know, when I heard him talk, well, when I first heard that he was attached to the project, I thought that, that was just kind of a cool idea. But when I recently saw the pictures that he released and him talking about it, it kind of makes me think that we're not going to get like a campy, kind of phoned in performance. It seems like he's really spending a lot of time on this, and it's going to be like a really deeply written, complicated character. So, and I don't know about you, but I haven't seen a lot from Black Adam in the DC, universe. So I'm really excited to see what this brings, because again, like there's no animated movies really. There's obviously no movies. I'm sure there's comic books. You see a little bit of him in some of the maybe like video games. I know like in Injustice, but I think this is going to be a real interesting storyline.
Yeah, check out if you haven't on HBO Max. It's like the Return of Black Adam. He shows up and he wastes Shazam, and basically Shazam needs the help of Superman. So that's why a lot of people are pining to see Henry Cavill reprise his role of Superman to go up against Black Adam. Not to say that Shazam won't be able to take him on when the two inevitably clash, since he is Shazam's big bad, or one of the big bads. But the reason why Black Adam and Superman is so interesting, and I want to see it so much, is Black Adam, controls the power of magic. He knows how to use magic. Magic, most recently, being something that we found out Superman has a vulnerability to, almost like kryptonite. So that's why it's super interesting, and I'd love to see those two big. I mean, just think Dwayne Johnson and Henry Cavill just alone on screen together. How cool that would be.
That movie would just write itself. I mean, WB would be stupid not to want to greenlight that film.
Right. And speaking of what WB might have greenlit, Joker 2 rumors, Kyle. You and I were talking about this too. Are running rampant. It sounds like we're getting a Joker 2. So let's just real quick, since this is news, how the heck would you write a Joker, a sequel to that brilliant movie?
I think, there's a lot of different ways you can take that story. But in the second film, I would really focus on maybe it starts with you seeing him in Arkham Asylum and then kind of trying to figure out who he is or what his motivations are. And then obviously you kind of have the outside where you have this cult following that keeps growing and growing and growing. And that ultimately leads to him escaping and starting his rise to power. This can ultimately lead into a third movie where maybe at the end you see Batman show up. I would really like to see it really focused on the Joker or Arthur Fleck, because I think there's just a really good story there. I like the director's vision. I don't remember the director's name, but Todd. I really like his Todd Phillips, right? That was it. But I really like his vision, and I really think this can go in a really good direction. I know some people have talked about the first one was a great movie, don't ruin it, but I really think you can really capitalize on it. It's not just because it was successful, but because there's a really good story there.
Mm-hmm. 100% right. I'm thinking that this movie really should focus on the buildup of the following, just to your point. And all this could happen while Arthur is locked up, right? And I really want this movie too, because the first one delivered on a message about mental health. And the more I think about the sequel, if you truly want to keep Batman away from this and make it a Joker-driven story, which I find it difficult to make an original story out of, but the options could be endless, because you could create another crime thriller where the Joker's going on a killing spree for no apparent reason. Society's continuing to crumble, and they're all getting behind him. He continuously escapes out of Arkham, as he famously does. There's a lot of things you could do, and just like you said, I'm going to trust and leave that to Todd Phillips, the one who Warner Brothers is paying to make this movie, because it's tough. You almost have to write the movie like Arthur is the victim, if that makes any sense, because you kind of felt for him like the victim in the first movie, so you have to continue that, even though he's pretty pure evil right now.
And I like the theme of the mental health being behind that, and kind of society's way of just tossing it aside or overlooking it. Like the Joker talks about, if it was him laying in the gutter, they would just walk right past him. Mm-hmm. And so I really like that idea. I think it's really smart and ingenious. And from the beginning, I just knew that movie was just going to be something next level.
It's true. It was a little, the movie made me sit on the edge of my seat the whole time with nervousness, but that means it did the right thing. So moving along, speaking of movies, and there have been early screenings of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which is coming out later this year in August. And, the reviews are positive, but they always tend to be that way in the beginning. I'm glad that the reviews are positive. I wish David Ayer could have had his original version of Suicide Squad shown, plus he would have been given the sequel. I know this is a sequel of Suicide Squad, kind of like a soft reboot. I don't know. I'm going to see this movie. I can't wait for it. But I can't help but think there might be a little James Gunn bias because of the success he's had with Guardians of the Galaxy, so people might flock to it because of that. But nonetheless, I'm still excited, and I'm interested to see all these different villains kind of work together, merge together. I'm excited about King Shark, and again, the evolution of Harley Quinn. Let's see what's next for her.
Yeah, I can't wait for that film. I think I hope it's not like just a Guardians of the Galaxy DC style. I hope he kind of brings something different. And I don't doubt that that movie isn't just going to be a fun film. I wonder if the Joker will be in it, like kind of as like a cameo. I can't really see it because whenever the Joker enters a movie, he just steals everyone's thunder, and I almost kind of wonder if it needs that. But still, I think it'd be cool to kind of see. There's a lot of villains in there that I've never heard of, or I really don't know a lot about. So it'll be interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm. And we're getting a spin-off HBO Max series from that with the Peacemaker series that James Gunn is working on with John Cena. So he must have some sort of big role in this movie.
I think it was Idris Elba's character. I don't know which one he is, but he goes to John Cena in the trailers, made fun of him for having like a toilet bowl on his head. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like this coming from a guy who's got a toilet bowl on his head. I like the fact that they kind of like make fun of it because like a lot of the superhero costumes in the comics are just tacky as fuck, and to really adapt that live action, you almost kind of have to have that joke to do it.
Right. Well, James Gunn is pulling from like the early animation.
Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man.
Can't wait to see.
Polka Dot Man. There you go.
Yeah, Polka Dot Man. I think he was on The Flash, though. Maybe. Or no, I don't know. I don't know if that villain was. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. I'm getting feedback again on your site.
You getting feedback?
Again, yes.
What the fuck? Like the echo?
Yeah, echo. I can hear myself. Oh, now I can't. It goes in and out. So anyway, all right. So moving along. Titans to return for season 3 and debut on HBO Max. So they're jumping the ship from the DC Universe Online or DC Infinite. See, it wasn't even around that long. I don't even know what to call it. But they're moving to HBO Max. They dropped a video on Twitter and confirmed that they were filming, and it sounds like season 3 will come out in August. So I believe once the last end of season 2 where we left off, season 3 should revolve around Starfire and Blackfire's rivalry, which is cool. They've been building that up as more and more Starfire becomes more powerful and more of a prominent character on Titans. Season 2 took a different path than season 1. I want to see a lot of Red Hood in season 3, just because he's such a good character. I hope he's written well. I don't know how I feel about the character they got to play Jason Todd on Titans. What do you think about that, Kyle?
I don't know. I think the actor that they picked, he's doing really well because he kind of has that like, kind of mouthy millennial type of persona. And kind of like he's not going to go along with the rest of the crowd. And I think that's a lot of Jason Todd. He's not like Dick Grayson, just kind of like follows Batman with almost his every word. He kind of is on his own journey. And I think it'll be an interesting take. I think this will be the first time we've ever seen a Red Hood live action. So, I'm interested to see whatever they have. I think it'll be good.
You're right. Obviously my mind first went to Arkham Knight, but that was a video game. So, which by the way, we should do a podcast on the Arkham series.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, all right. Yeah. So, I do want to see a lot of Red Hood. And when I first met that actor who plays Jason Todd, for whatever reason, I felt more Damian Wayne out of him than I did anything else. Where I feel like he should play Damian.
You actually met him?
Oh, no. When I first saw him like debut, I don't know what I said. When I first saw him like debut on the actual show, I thought he was the Damian Wayne Robin. I didn't think he was Jason Todd at first, and then he's like, "Hey, I'm Jason." I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay." It just took a while for his iteration of Jason Todd to grow on me. And it has, and I'm excited for season 3, but I saw Damian Wayne first for whatever reason.
I don't see Damian Wayne because Damian Wayne he's kind of like a little shit, but he's very disciplined. With whoever the actor is that plays Jason Todd, he seems like, again, like somebody who doesn't want to put in the work to get to where he needs to be, to get to like Batman's level, for example. Whereas Damian is very much, close to Batman's level, but he's just a mouthy little shit in a lot of the versions that we've seen. I don't know. Again, it'll be interesting. Maybe we might get to see we won't get to see an infamous Joker with a crowbar scene, which we all kind of want to see that.
We do.
But maybe, I mean, unless they, I don't know, pull the red tape and allow the Joker, but they're not going to do that.
No way in hell they allow that. No.
Seems like Batman and the Joker, as far as TV goes, are like untouchable. Like you can't use them. You can barely use them. I mean, the CW for the longest time wouldn't even like mention the existence of Gotham. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
See, I'm getting feedback. Damn stupid podcast. Anyway. So Marvel, Modok series on Hulu. I don't know if you've watched this, Kyle, but it's not Marvel Studios, but it's a Marvel property, and it's gaining a lot of traction online. I've seen some people say it's hilarious and it's a lot like Robot Chicken, but I've seen others pan this and say it's terrible. They're calling it boring. Patton Oswalt voices Modok. Do you have any interest in checking this out on Hulu?
Not. I've seen the, recommendation for it when I logged into Hulu, but I haven't had a desire to watch it. It kind of made me think of the Harley Quinn show. I mean, I don't know if it's that style of humor. I definitely will watch it, but I don't know. I mean, I guess like I maybe have to like give it a chance, but initially I wasn't really gonna watch it.
I'm gonna give it a chance, but I'm gonna fit it in sometime in the near future. Speaking of giving things a chance, I gave Square Enix's Marvel Avengers a chance, and their Tomb Raider reboot a chance, which were decent. But it sounds like Square Enix is developing a Guardians of the Galaxy game, it appears. And as long as this isn't what the Avengers game was, I'll probably like it.
Well, let's say the Avengers game, it had good gameplay, it had good fighting, and like a good. I mean, the characters look good, but just like it's like the same level. You just and then it's just, what do they call that? Not data mining, but where you're just playing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again to like build up, your experience points so you can upgrade your character, and you have to do it a million times. It's just obnoxious as fuck. Like complete miss. That game looked brilliant, but I don't know how they fucked that up.
It was a spectacular story. I was invested from the get-go. I loved the story for Kamala Khan and the whole like Avengers Day thing and like collecting the comic books and then it just to your point, it just kind of fell flat from there. I don't know. So I have something to admit as far as Marvel goes, and I'm going to need you to do a little bit of a breakdown here because I still have yet to watch the Eternals trailer. So, what did you think of the trailer, Kyle?
I mean, if I watched it before bedtime, I feel like it would have helped me sleep better. And I know that's really flinging some shit, but again, I might eat those words when I see it, but it was really boring. And I feel like, with Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, you have Chris Pratt, kind of like jumping around listening to his music, and you see Drax and Rocket Raccoon. It looks interesting. And even at the time, nobody really knew those characters. But you went to see it because it was different, and you had good casting, and, the trailer looked interesting. This was just boring. Like, it really didn't draw me in, didn't really get me invested in the story at all. I mean, so I hope, again, I'm wrong about that. I probably will end up seeing it, but I'm not, like, super excited about it.
That's fair. That's kind of how I feel right now. And I've seen some people's reactions to it, and I've seen a lot of memes thus far, and typically sometimes the memes can just tell a story. And one of the memes are somebody saying we've waited so long to interfere until now or something like that. So they were basically letting the Avengers do their thing, letting the Guardians of the Galaxy do their thing. So it's like, why all of a sudden do you decide to step in now? Like, you didn't want to step in for the Thanos snap, or you didn't want to step in for the Avengers in New York with the alien invasion, and you didn't want to step in that, oh, what's that? The villain's name in Doctor Strange. That was a big deal. Mordo? Was that, does that sound right?
Mordo was one of them, but then there was the guy that was trapped in. Why can't I think of his? I'm just blanking on his name. The guy with the skull head.
Right.
I'm totally blanking on his totally blanking on his name. Fuck.
That's all right. We'll get it. We'll get it. And here's some Marvel news that's pretty exciting because I like the character. And this is news you broke to me. But Aaron Taylor Johnson was casted as Kraven the Hunter. It's a Sony movie, but it's still a Marvel property. Are you excited for Kraven?
You know, I feel like I might speak for most people when I say that I wanted Jason Momoa as Kraven the Hunter, because let's face it, he would look perfect for the part. Aaron Taylor Johnson, that's his name, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Marvel will do a good. Well, this is like Sony's property, so who knows what they'll do. And I feel like Sony's really just playing up the Marvel villains, and I don't know why. They're just kind of making movies about like Spider-Man's villains, practically. So, Kraven wasn't somebody that I was always interested in, as far as Spider-Man villains go. But again, we've never seen him, so it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table. I don't know about the casting, but we've been wrong about casting before. I mean, we're talking about the Nolan universe today, and we can't definitely not talk about how everybody was really upset about Heath Ledger's casting. So
great point, and great little preview there, because that's kind of what started. I remember all the cat bitching about casting, especially in the comic book world. But we'll get there when we talk. So moving along to theme park and Star Wars news and rumors. So Disneyland, West Coast Disneyland, will now reopen to everybody outside of just the citizens of California on June 15th. And they just recently released a detailed Avengers Campus map. We're pumped for this. I'm pumped for Avengers Campus. But some fearless keyboard warriors out there on Diz Twitter have been complaining about it lacking things to do. I'm sorry, but what? Don't forget that we had Mission Breakout, the retheming of not Guardians. Well, it is Guardians of the Galaxy, but the retheming of the Hollywood Tower of Terror. Thank you. And the better versions in Disney World anyway, so they rethemed the right one. But they've been complaining about what there is to do. So we've got Mission Breakout for a few years. That goes along with the land as it opens, okay, people? So we have the brand new, very interactive Web Slingers, a Spider-Man adventure attraction, which allows us to shoot webs. I mean, come on. We've always wanted to do that. And I can't wait to try that in about 5 weeks. Doctor Strange's Sanctum, where it sounds like Doctor Strange will be there explaining the multiverse. I love when comic books get into things about the multiverse. So far, Avengers Campus is hitting it out of the park for me. They have a new Hank Pym's Test Kitchen, where all that $100 sandwich that I just heard about is most likely going to be sold at, because I believe it's coming out of Avengers Campus. The Collector's Warehouse. Yeah, did you hear about that?
$100 sandwich?
Yeah, it's supposedly meant for multiple people, obviously, but some of those fatties out there are going to buy it for themselves, Kyle.
It's like the kitchen sink. Why don't they just put that with the kitchen sink, and then you'll really have like somebody have a heart attack? I mean, that just, you get like the kitchen sink, the $100 sandwich, and then like your own personal casket with like
defibrillator
mouse on it. What's the sandwich called? What is it, like the Fat Shit Supreme or something?
I literally think it's called the $100 sandwich.
Wow. Okay, well, I would have maybe gone with something different, but anyway.
Yeah, the Collector's Warehouse and the Avengers HQ with the Quinjet on top of the HQ. So there's a lot, guys, coming to Avengers Campus. It opens on June 4th, which is this upcoming Friday. That's freaking nuts. I mean, this was also supposed to be open already, but the pandemic happened. So the fact that we're getting there, the fact that we're going to be getting people outside of California back to Disneyland, which is not just a locals park, people. The moment that they announced on June 15th, which I called, by the way, not to toot my own horn, but as soon as I saw, I mean, I'm pretty sure a flying squirrel could have guessed this, but as soon as I saw that California was ditching their mask mandate and basically going back to 100% on June 15th, that pretty much was the writing on the wall for Disneyland. So anyway, and Web Slingers is going to utilize a virtual queue, and I'm honestly not that mad about the virtual queue. You hold our spot in line while we go off and do other stuff. Works for me. We like it that way, right, Kyle?
Yeah, and I won't say a lot about Avengers Campus, but I will say this, is that if you look at the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, even if both of the main rides were down, you would still have a really good time in there because there's a lot to see, there's a lot to do in there, and it's just I mean, again, like we went there and we only got on Rise of the Resistance barely, like, and we still had a great time. It still was amazing. Like we spent a good chunk of time there. So if Avengers Campus is anything like that, I mean, I really can't wait. I can't wait for like the YouTube video of somebody walking through there just so I can get a better idea of what it looks like. And obviously going there, of course. So
yes, sir.
I think it's going to be amazing.
Yes, sir. Oh, no, great point.
Put it in
great.
Florida, though.
What was that?
They should have put it in Florida, though.
I agree. I do agree. Like Avengers Campus is connected to the other parks. Like there's some foreign parks with an Avengers Campus too. I hope eventually they put something in Hollywood Studios. But
they
please
got to. That's too big of a franchise to like just keep it in California.
I've said this once and I'll say it again, but please don't pave over my Muppets 3D to make it. That's all I want.
That's a good sacrifice, though. Let's be honest. It's a good sacrifice.
Give me some time to think about it, okay? I'm not ready. All right, moving along. Fans rallied online to hashtag make Solo 2 happen for some reason. For me, okay, if you're going to give us a Solo 2 movie, of course I'm going to go see it. It's Star Wars. I'd be just as excited for it as I was for episode 7, 8, and 9. But for me, it would have to be the right Han Solo story. Okay, the original Solo movie explored, things that we kind of already knew about with Han, right? He meets Chewie, which is cool. We saw that, and there was a little bit of a love interest there, and it was cool to see that he kind of flirted with maybe joining the Empire as a pilot, and we got to see his scavenger-like ways, or smuggler-like ways, not scavenger, very smuggler-like ways, and it delivered some decent scenes, the surprise Darth Maul at the end, and but again, if you're gonna make Solo 2, give me a gritty, a dangerous, like a consequential Han Solo story. Like, show me how dark he is. Like, there's a comic run out there, Kyle, and I think you'd love it, and remind me to send it to you after the podcast, because you're a big Han Solo guy. But Han goes toe-to-toe with Darth Vader. It's in between, I believe. It's in between the movies, but it goes toe-to-toe with Vader. And I won't give too much away because there's a lot of great stuff in there. But I'd love to see a movie like that. Like, you want to get people interested in Solo 2? Okay, give me Darth Vader versus Han Solo.
The only thing that I would say is, like, I'm all for more Han Solo. Recast that fucking actor.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Yeah. There's actually a guy on YouTube, an impersonator. His name is Jamie Costa, and he does a lot of impersonations, but then he's done these fan films, and they're kind of high budget, and he looks and sounds like Harrison Ford. And like, if you've seen him on YouTube, it's like, why didn't they get him? It would have been amazing. Like, so much better. You actually get the sound and kind of like the mannerisms. There's always like somebody out there on YouTube, even when they were doing the casting for Batman vs Superman, there's always somebody out there that just like embodies the part, but then they just go with somebody different. And Ben Affleck wasn't a bad choice, don't get me wrong, but again, just the choices that they make.
sometimes the actors and actresses are in bed with the studio. So, but
True.
sometimes we're wrong about the casting. But speaking of Star Wars, our Lord and Savior Zack Snyder had said on a podcast, and you and I were gushing about this, but he had basically said on a podcast that he had a Star Wars script written revolving the Seven Samurai. So now there seems to be a strong rumor and fan speculation, geez, where Snyder could show us, out of his film, if he were to ever get to make a film. And this is a Star Wars hot take that I have, and I posted online, and I got a little grief from, but that's fine because I understand Zack Snyder's controversial for whatever reason. And I get not everybody could dig his style, but Star Wars needs a Zack Snyder film. Give him a one-off, or give him a trilogy. Make me really happy. There's a strong rumor out there, Kyle, where they think Snyder could do a really good job showing us Yoda's true history and backstory, like how he would go through his rough times in his younger years, showing us what transformed him like into the wise Jedi that he was when he passed on Dagobah. And he was as a Force ghost, what saved Luke in The Last Jedi, but I digress. But in a perfect world, could you imagine if Star Wars had his hands on the prequels and Anakin's upbringing? Like, could you imagine a Zack Snyder Darth Vader prequel story? Just think about that for a minute. How much darker that would be.
I think it would be an interesting take. I think he can do a good job. It seems like now he's like the Donald Trump of the director world now, or Hollywood even for that matter, because he's got so much, there's such a huge passion following, but then he's got a lot of hate too.
That's a good point. Brad said he wants to come on our podcast of the Jedi Talk podcast. And I want to get a difference of opinion on Snyder because obviously you and I are Snyder bros, right? We're big fans, and we love Batman vs Superman, Man of Steel, his cut of the Justice League, and I'll fight those tooth and nail. But get him on. I want to hear what people think about him. What makes him so controversial? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, even with Batman vs Superman, I can understand the controversy because I remember when I first saw it, it took me a minute to like really process it. And I think it was when the next time I saw it, that's when it really clicked for me. Because Batman was so different than what we have seen. This is a much darker one. And I think too, just the extended cut really kind of filled in the movie plot holes where, there was kind of like a lot missing. And so I felt like that made a huge difference too. So I think, again, a lot of people just didn't like understand that dark vision, but that's DC. They're not sunshine and rainbows like Marvel universe tends to be.
You're right. You're 100% right. So kind of moving along, to finish the thought on Snyder and his Star Wars, the prequels, he could have done the prequels justice, for those who don't think they're given justice. And they are what they are, and I enjoy them for what I can. But if it were modern day, let's see, he can't direct an episode of The Mandalorian season 3, but the ideas if Snyder got his hands on an episode of The Mandalorian. Let's see Zack take on on the world post episode 9. Show us an older Rey, kind of like he gave us an older Bruce Wayne Batman, who's battling conflict again on newer levels. She's feeling pressure of restoring the Jedi Order, keeping balance in the Force, at least in her eyes, and personal issues with her family. This is a grown-up Rey. She's probably got a couple of kids. I'd like to see Zack almost take on an apocalyptic Star Wars world where Rey, much like Superman in the Injustice storyline, gives into the dark side, and Sith Rey rules with like an iron fist and reigns supreme on the galaxy. Now, I'm a lot darker when it comes to my storylines, but yeah.
I'd like to see that. I think that's a cool idea.
Thank you. I'd like to think so too. So, all right. So moving it along. Speaking of, again, Star Wars, real quick, and then we'll get to the Nolan trilogy. We talked on our Star Wars episode about the upcoming Rangers of the New Republic, but now this is reportedly not in development for Disney+. And all signs are pointing to me that Gina Carano, a.k.a. Cara Dune, must have been all over this series. And I, for one, trying to get rid of her, we've given our thoughts. I'll just say this: I would like to see Cara Dune return and not recast in the future. So let's see Rangers of the New Republic, because I was kind of excited for this. So anyway, more theme park news. Bob Chapek said park reservation system and virtual queues will stick around. The reservation system right now doesn't bother me as a park goer as much. You know, Kyle, you and I are very touristy. We go once or twice a year. However, I feel like once we're annual pass holders, I feel like the reservation system might get annoying. How do you like the theme park reservation system?
I get it for right now, and if it controls the population to allow for a more comfortable experience, I'd be fine with it. But before the pandemic, the fast pass system worked beautifully. I always never felt like I waited in line there, or like it was just a long hot day, like standing in the sun waiting to get on one of my favorite rides. I thought that worked a lot better. And as of recent, which I had the unfortunate I learned, unfortunately, like if you don't reserve a park, you can't just go there. Like if you want to go, if you lived by Florida or, in near Disney World, you can't just decide, oh, you know what, this weekend I'm going to go, or like it's Friday and tomorrow is Saturday and I want to go to Magic Kingdom. You can't really do that because people book it so far out. And I just think that's obnoxious. So I don't know. I felt like that maybe it would be better not doing that personally.
Yeah, I hear you, and they're very close in Orange County in Florida to basically saying we can let 100% capacity in, and Disney's pushing it up as it is. And trust me, the moment Disney has the means to open up the park 100%, they're going to. They're hiring like crazy right now, but more to come on that. And last but certainly not least, before I ginger snap, more Star Wars news. And I sigh when I say this because I don't want it to happen, but the rumor is Brie Larson rumored to play Mara Jade, who's Luke Skywalker's wife, in an upcoming project for Star Wars. First off, no. I personally just don't like Brie Larson, the actress, and the person. And I didn't like Captain Marvel, but I'll explain it during next week's Marvel podcast a little bit more. She rubs me the wrong way. Plus, and here's my biggest issue with this, okay? You're going to hire someone just as outspoken as Gina Carano, but be okay with it? You can't have both. You can't have both. And, regardless of what was right and wrong with what Gina might have said, Brie said some crappy stuff too, okay? And it's both of their rights to say it. And it's your right, Disney, as a company, to make a decision on those individuals. And I completely support that. But you can't have it both ways. Plus, the perfect Mara Jade is Karen Gillian anyway.
I'd rather see a show or a movie where Luke Skywalker's married to Yoda, and they argue like an old couple, an old married couple, than see Brie Larson play Mara Jade. I don't know. I think that and maybe in all seriousness, that might not actually be a funny way to do like a funny Star Wars, because we haven't really seen a funny spoof Star Wars, other than maybe Spaceballs, but does that really count? I don't know.
Not really. Not really.
But anyway.
All right. So that's news and rumors, and I've got a big problem with something specifically this week, and this is my ginger snaps, okay? So why does it seem that Universal Studios theme parks seemingly always get a pass for the same things that Disney does? Okay? Theme parks are a big part of my life, and they're a big part of Kyle's life too. But for me, I admittedly enjoy Disney better than I do Universal Studios, because to me, things are just done better, more efficiently, uniquely, and overall, there's more to offer at Disney World and Disneyland versus their Universal counterparts. That's my preference. Don't fucking bother me about it. But don't get me wrong, Universal Studios Orlando has a lot of things that I love. Take my motorboat and Buddy Haggard and his motorboat. I did it again. And his motorbike adventure ride.
Just admit to everybody right now how much you really like motorboating Hagrid and your long-standing relationship with this large hairy man.
It started when he first brought me a bag of White Castle. with Buck Beak. I got to feed him a slider, bowed to him first, of course, but the rest is just history.
Did he offer to bring you to the quote unquote Chamber of Secrets?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
All right,
But
so
moving
you were
along.
motorboating. You were motorboating Hagrid.
Yes, my motorboating buddy Hagrid and his motorbike adventure. It's freaking excellent. It's surprising. It's fast. It's a perfect replacement for the dueling dragons. But why in God's name is it okay, according to the internet, for this ride to never work properly? But if, God forbid, Rise of the Resistance goes down for 1 second, the heavens open up and the bloggers drop down from the sky, flat on their churro cover faces, writing misspelled headlines and articles about "Derp Rise failed again, a derp." Where's the fucking integrity, huh? You're a wannabe journalist writing about a theme park. What do you have to gain by selling negativity and speculation, okay? How the hell do you fix the world starting with theme parks? Please tell us. I'm waiting. I bet you don't know, okay? But you attack their bigger brand of the two, Disney in this case, because the intern running the Universal Studios Orlando Twitter has a good sense of humor. And you also complain about legacy lightsabers from Galaxy's Edge. But you never bitch about the Harry Potter wands, which are essentially the same thing, but cheaper, unless it's the interactive one. And I'm not bashing on the Harry Potter wands. I'm just saying you're going to bitch about these legacy lightsabers and interactive things that Disney's selling, but Universal gets the pass. Why? Because they're not Disney? And don't get me started on how all y'all blew up the moment Web Slingers offered a purchased upgrade for the ride, which is kind of just like a real life version of downloadable content, but nothing about those interactive wands again. And that make things happen all around Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley. Is it okay for me to complain about every single ride at Universal Studios Orlando requiring me, one, to empty my pockets, hand over my social security card, and put on glasses that causes motion sickness? I should also mention that Disney's FastPass system is superior to the paid version of Universal Studios. That adds up, okay? And just because I always do it, the FastPass system at Universal when we go, so I know it adds up. It's several $100s just to get front of the line instead of FastPass that's included in your admission. Just because the mouse did your Star Wars dirties in your eyes doesn't give you the right to blast the internet when your unnecessary take on how Walt's vision is dying. Tree lines are non-existent. Who stole my double fudge sundae? Nobody stole it, blogger. You ate it too fast and forgot because you were tweeting a rant about how Disney placed a curb in your way and you tripped, throwing your $100 sandwich from Avengers Campus into the air all over Sunset Boulevard. And yeah, I saw you bashing Disney immediately after Universal Studios bumped up their starting wages to $15 an hour for people, saying, "Where's Disney now?" But oh, how you forget, people of the internet, that Disney came out in 2018 and said their wages would rise to $15 an hour in 2021. Step aside, okay? Because Disney is king, queen, prince, and princess of the theme park world. I don't make the rules. I just enjoy them. Let's talk about the Nolan trilogy. Sound good, Kyle?
Sounds good.
All right. So arguably one of the best movie trilogies of the modern era. DC does this well, and they've represented Christopher Nolan's vision of Batman excellently. And Nolan himself is praised for his depiction of Batman. But let's start here, Kyle. What do you love about this trilogy of films? What makes you go back and watch them again?
Well, starting with Batman Begins, I think this film really redefined the superhero formula. Instead of a campy film with tired old superhero tropes that we've gotten from the past, we got a more complex and deeply written story. Not to mention the removal of those goddamn nipples from the Batsuit. I mean, we were all happy when actually it was Christian Bale who advocated for this. He's like, no nipples and no Robin, and we were all happier because of that. But the thing that I like about this is that you see Bruce Wayne's psychological struggle and the trauma of losing his parents at a young age. They don't just kind of like gloss over that. It's what's great about this. And it's the major part of the first film. And it's in the first part of the film is you don't even see Batman. It's just Bruce. This ultimately leads him to utilize his trauma and fear to develop the Dark Knight. So we kind of get like a really good sense of how the Dark Knight is born, and it's executed brilliantly. So you kind of see, like, in like the last 40 minutes of the film, you kind of see where Bruce's motivations come from to fight crime and save the city. not only is it like a really well written story, Batman is just is perceived to just be so badass in these films. I mean, not saying that Michael Keaton's Batman wasn't badass, but after what came after Keaton was just god awful, just laughable. But I always loved the story arc of one man versus the world. The idea that a character just decides one day that enough is enough, and they're going to take matters into their own hands. And this is very core to who Batman is, and it's probably the most realistic version of a real life Batman. I know myself. I kept a newspaper clipping when the Dark Knight came out, where they talked about like how much money you would need to be Batman, and it's really realistic. But not only that, but his fighting style, the gadgets that he uses, and utilization of fear to take down his enemies is just so different than anything we've seen. Not to mention the tumbler pancaking cop cars and driving on rooftops. So I really feel like this is what really started to kick off the superhero film era. This was when kind of set the bar. I always felt like it set the bar. Not saying that, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies weren't deep and complexly written, but this just seemed like it made it okay to make a more complex, more mature superhero film. And that's why I think we love it so much. One of the reasons, anyway.
Excellently said. I agree with you, and I love the real world feel to this Batman. I feel that's how Christian Bale specifically and Nolan connected and hit so well, obviously behind the good script and story from everyone involved, to general audiences. So this real world Batman really hit the general audiences. Of course, they know who Batman is. And it didn't dive too deep into the Batman lore outside of the names and faces that people already know, like Joker, Two-Face, Catwoman, Alfred, and everybody knows why Bruce becomes Batman. He sees his parents die. But when it introduced the likes of like the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul, as they call him, but he'll always be Ra's al Ghul to me, it was explained well, and the backstory made sense for general audiences. And basically what I'm trying to say, it did really good toting, and it did tote a good line of where huge nerds and the general public could enjoy these films together. Because, I love the grim take on the Joker. And it was fresh at the time and really changed the game on how the character should be portrayed moving forward. Those are the things I love about it. People of two different worlds could come together because Nolan and everybody involved really delivered on a real world Batman that everybody could enjoy. So yeah, it's at first with this trilogy of movies, I thought they were untouchable. I just thought I was so involved. And I remember after seeing The Dark Knight, just being so super obsessed about it, and rightfully so. But, as we move forward, we grow, we watch more, we see different iterations and different versions of not only Batman, but, the people in the DC universe and different villains. What have we not grown, but what have we come to maybe dislike or things we might change about it? I'll go real quick, and I really hate and dislike maybe how Bale's voice progresses in the trilogy of the films, how gutturally the throat cancer it goes, a little bit on it, but and I might be nitpicking because he's trying to hide his voice, but the gargly throat cancer Batman just doesn't do it for me. And when I think about hate and dislike for this trilogy, and I'll say dislike because I don't want to use hate, but I get real close to saying hate with this. Anne Hathaway comes up a lot for me. And at first I was like, all right, this works. Then it kind of worked. And then I saw it again, and then I felt guilt for liking it. And then I started to feel okay about it. And now she's already behind Zoe Kravitz for me. And Zoe's only been in a trailer as Selena Kyle, and we haven't even seen her in the full Catwoman suit yet. Another thing that I really, really dislike is Talia Al Ghul's death scene. I think it's the worst death scene in the history of cinema, and I'm not even joking. Even Oscar and Michael Scott's Threat Level Midnight died better than that. But to that point, I didn't like how involved and obsessed Bruce was with Rachel, and then Talia. I mean, Talia makes sense from a comic perspective because they have Damian Wayne together. But that comic Batman iteration still semi-distanced himself emotionally from Talia Al Ghul. And if Bruce is going to get seduced into doing anything, I'd rather it come from Poison Ivy. Um, I would just, it's that how deep he was into Rachel, and and I get it, you're trying to make a connection, but it's just I prefer my Batman a little bit distanced from his relationships.
I would say this though is that these these movies were amazing, but they really weren't comic book, accurate. I would say it's kind of like they took what the mythos of Batman and made it like realistic. And I think that's why you really didn't see like anything cheesy or something that wasn't believable. And even I think Christopher Nolan was talking about most of that most of those films were shot like without CGI or green screens. And I think that's what made it really amazing and realistic is because they didn't have that.
Great point. Great point. Would you have changed anything about the trilogy?
Yeah, so the things that I disliked, there was a couple of things. And first thing, and I've talked about this before, is just the fighting choreography. It really hasn't aged well. And if you really, I mean, it's slow and not very realistic. I mean, consider like the Bane fight. If you haven't watched the movie in a while, go back and watch like the Bane fight at the end and compare it to the warehouse fight scene in BVS. And there's a huge contrast. And I will say this too, like I definitely understand the gravelly voice. I mean, it works, but like I feel like what they've done with like what they did with Arrow on the CW show and in Batman vs Superman, where they just used the voice modulator, I thought that was perfect. A couple other things that are worth noting that I didn't really like. They kind of downplayed Bruce Wayne's intelligence, which is so core to who he is. And there's one scene where Lucius Fox explains what's in the antidote to the fear toxin, and Bruce Wayne remarks, like, I understood any of that. I mean, and I think again, it's just like when we think about core Batman, you think about Kevin Conroy's Batman, where you get like the best of all worlds. Like you get the detective, you get the, the ninja, the fear, and just like the amazing combat and brutality. So I want to see more of that, and I hope they kind of bring more of his intelligence, and I think that's kind of the angle they're going to take for the Batman movie. So I'm looking forward to that. One last thing that bothered me, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but not continuing on with the Joker in the third film. Now I know that this probably would be impossible. It's kind of like the same thing I feel about Chadwick Boseman and in Black Panther. This arguably was like one of the greatest iterations of the Joker, and just to throw it away was just so unfortunate. And I think to really add insult to insult to injury is that they made no mention of him whatsoever. They didn't pay homage to him. They didn't talk about him. There wasn't anything about him. The only time that they really talked about him was actually not on screen. It was in the book. And I don't know if you knew about this, Tom, but there was one line in the book where they mentioned the Joker. And I wrote it down. It says, according to the book, Gotham's criminal fraternity were moved from Arkham Asylum to Blackgate Prison following the creation of the Dent Act. All but one, that is, as the novelization explains. The worst of the worst were sent here, except for the Joker, who, rumor had it, was locked away as Arkham's sole remaining inmate, or perhaps he escaped. Nobody was really even sure, not even Selina. So that's what it said in the book. And the book kind of like version of the Dark Knight Rises. But again, I just feel like such a great character, like the punk rock Joker. The role that probably took Heath Ledger's life. I mean, you look back at the Joker and you look at Heath Ledger's other work, and you could probably say there's no Heath Ledger in that performance whatsoever. It's like he just became something else. If you told me that wasn't Heath Ledger, I would believe it, because that's how method he went with it. So those would be things that I would kind of focus on for the things I disliked about it.
Yeah, mentioning the Joker in Dark Knight Rises, I just don't get that. I don't get why they didn't do that. And I remember you actually telling me that note on the book specifically that they make mention of the Joker. Why couldn't that have been done in the movie? Were they trying to pay some sort of respect to him by not mentioning him at all, not even showing him? I don't know. I still hold.
It's like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I still hold true to the fact that I believe the third movie was going to look a little bit differently if Heath was still alive, and that he would have been around and did not take his own life. So, but we're about to talk about villains anyway. So finish up your thought, then we'll jump to the villains of the trilogy.
Yeah, I would just say that like what they're going to do with Black Panther 2, they're going to I think the director has talked about paying homage to Chadwick Boseman, because you can't just take a great character's untimely death and just forget about it. And I don't know, I just feel like it could have been like at least like a remark, a line, or like they could have walked through Arkham Asylum and you see like a door that says the Joker on it and you hear him laugh, something like that, something to like really pay homage. Or even like, I don't know, like you see him escape, or somebody talk about, oh, the Joker escaped, something like that. It just was unfortunate. That's definitely the one thing that I would change.
That's fair. So let's move and segue into those villains that we got. About two to three per movie, which was pretty cool. So obviously, the Joker outshines them all with the brilliant performance by Heath Ledger. We've already started talking about him because you can't not talk about that when you talk about the Dark Knight trilogy. It's as simple as that. You start there. We can go up and down all night about it. In fact, I will a little bit. But before Ledger in The Dark Knight, we had Jack Nicholson's gangster take, which was arguably the best at the time before Ledger made his debut. He really only had to fight against the 60s Batman Cesar Romero and that mustache of his that he refused to shave. Of course, we had Luke Skywalker and Mark Hamill burst onto the Joker scene with Batman, the animated series, and essentially set the voice acting bar for the perfect Joker. And we said it before, and I'll say it again. He set the bar for the perfect Joker. What Heath Ledger did was take the unique and mysterious nature of his backstory, interject the tiniest bit of cruel humor, and really embrace the Joker's dark and psychotic roots. And it was the first time we ever saw anything like that. And here's just one criticism, and this is an after-the-fact thought, but in a way after-the-fact thought. But this Joker was really focused on one major goal of forcing either Batman or Harvey Dent to succumb to his side. I love that, but give me a little bit more randomness from this Joker. We had it. We had his randomness, and he was crazy. But I kind of want nitpicky after the fact thought. I wanted him a little bit more super crazy. He kind of jumps in between lone wolf in the beginning of the movie, then terrorist when he's killing cops and hanging them and terrorizing Gotham City, and then he eventually takes over as mob boss when he feeds the one guy to the dogs and burns all the money. And he famously tells Harvey Dent that he has no plan, but he kind of did. His plan was to turn Harvey Dent loose on the city, or get Batman to show himself, or get Batman to kill the Joker. That was his plan, essentially. And Two-Face is probably my favorite villain who isn't the Joker in this trilogy. I think Aaron Eckhart's take is pretty good for the short amount of time we're given. He really goes from an uncorrupt public servant to seeking out like justice based on the flip of a coin, doing the exact opposite and making his own luck. I loved that version of Harvey Dent and Two-Face. Obviously, we haven't had too many, but that was good. The Bane take fit well in this universe too, and I think that's one thing. I think all of these villains fit well in this universe that was created. The casting was done well, except for Anne Hathaway, and they were delivered well. Like I said, Bane would fit well in this universe, but I still found myself pining for the Bane who wasn't a puppet of the League of Shadows, which I hate that they're called the League of Shadows in this, but whatever. And I wanted a more comic accurate take from Bane, right? Again, Tom Hardy's version was great. He worked here. Kyle, you and I have spoken before. Would we ever have considered changing the main villain in The Dark Knight Rises? And you have vehemently said no before, and I still leave it up to thought. But give me a more comic accurate take on Bane, because he's a lot smarter than people let on. Scarecrow appeared in every flick. Jonathan Crane appeared in every movie of this trilogy, but the same as Bane. I would have liked an evolution of the villain. He was a drug dealer in The Dark Knight. after essentially helping the League of Assassins to try to purge Gotham through Carmen Falcone. Ra's al Ghul was great. He was mysterious and had a good twist for the Nolanverse. However, Talia Al Ghul, I've already given my thoughts on her. I would have done that a little differently.
So I was gonna say, like, when you're talking about the Joker, and I just couldn't help but think there was in his performance there was just an echo of that line that he so eloquently expresses in The Killing Joke. That all it takes is one bad day to drive the sanest man in the world into lunacy, and I really feel like that's at core who the Joker is, and I think really that's what his motive was in the Dark Knight. You know, because it's like he's trying to get Batman. You know, the Batman's the immovable object, and Joker is the unstoppable force. Um, and he's just trying to get, and even like the people on the boat, he's just trying to, like Batman says, try to make people as ugly. He's trying to get to see, like, you know, make people be as ugly as he is, but they're
Right.
not, and that's really, that's just the one thing that I was just thinking of right now. But maybe that's what they're really going for with him.
That's a good point. And again, it's a perfect fit, and the Dark Knight is pretty much untouchable, right? You know, we're gonna rank our movies later, but that movie tends to land as the best comic book movie ever up there. You know, a lot of people want to say Endgame. You know, they throw. I've heard Captain America: Winter Soldier out there, but hold that's a good movie, but hold a real candle to the Dark Knight, and I think it goes back to my point earlier of it toting a line between nerds and general audience. It just delivered. I know people who aren't that big into DC, but they know the Dark Knight, they know Heath Ledger, and they love that movie, and that's all they know of Batman, and that's because of Heath Ledger's performance.
You could say that, like, you could probably look at the Nolan trilogy and hear me out on this, and not even call it a superhero movie, because when you look at the Marvel stuff, those are superhero movies. I mean, they have colorful costumes. There's people with mutant special powers. This, you could have just said that this was a guy's one man's one man's war on crime in his city. He saw his city collapsing into chaos because of crime, and he just decided to take action. I mean, you really could have called it something different if you wanted to. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if you get that thought, but it just seemed like it was a more mature adult type of film. Whereas not saying that like great movies like Endgame or Infinity War, like any of the Marvel movies aren't great, but they're just, you almost can't even put them in the same class. You know, it's kind of like what I think about when I think about ranking the Jokers. They're just, it's so hard to do that because they're all just different in their own way, you know?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's why it's so hard to say Hamill is better than Ledger, or you know,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
even even bringing like even bringing Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, which was freaking brilliant on screen. You know, to compare him to Ledger, it was just so different. They both were different. You know, Arthur Fleck sort of had a background. Heath Ledger's Joker didn't, because he kept making up his backstory, and if he prefers his history to be anything, he prefers it to be multiple choice. And I know I butchered that line, but it's something along the lines of that, from a comic book. But yeah. So it's as we go along, you know, Ledger's performance, because as we wrap up on the villain take of the Dark Knight trilogy, it's no contest. He's up there. He's still the number one Joker. If you're going to rank him, if you force me to rank him, I'll still say Heath Ledger is still the number one. I think, you know, and a lot of people disagree with this, and I would just love to see a full film of Jared Leto play the Joker, like Snyder's version of the Joker, not the one that Warner Brothers kind of chopped up in the Suicide Squad. And I still liked that Joker, but I'd like to see Jared Leto get a full film. You know, maybe get Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn to you know, what was the name of that comic book? Love something. that they were talking about doing for Joker and Harley Quinn. But anyway, getting off on a tangent. So, any last thoughts on the villains for the Dark Knight trilogy, Kyle?
That movies or that comic book was called Mad Love.
Mad Love.
My villain breakdown, obviously the Joker's number one. And then the second one I would pick Bane, because if I were to ask anybody outside of the Joker who is the most memorable villain of that franchise or that trilogy, people would say Bane because of his voice and just his mannerisms and the things that he did. And even South Park made fun of it. But it wasn't the Bane that I would have done. I would have done like more core, like you saw in Arkham Origins. I mean, that was perfect. But I think Tom Hardy did a good job, and like it was just a unique character, a unique take on this, and so I put him at number 2, number 3, and 4, and 5. Ra's al Ghul, Scarecrow, Dent, and I really couldn't rank them accordingly. I know Talia was last because that performance really was kind of forgettable, but yeah. I think. Not saying the actress was bad because she wasn't. It's just that they didn't really do much with her. But I would say this, like Ra's al Ghul, Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson's just the man. He just owns every part. I love Cillian Murphy's take on Scarecrow. Like to your point, I think I would have liked to see more progression with him. I think I would have liked a better costume. But again, it's like we're dealing with a real kind of realistic Batman, so. Really couldn't go too over the top with it, which makes sense. Harvey Dent, I put at number 5. Again, you could probably rearrange these for me. I think they all kind of had their points, but I don't know. He didn't really. I think he looked great. I liked how they did like half of his face is like not like cheesy and purple like they did in one. What was it, Batman Forever, Batman vs. Robin, or Batman and Robin, whichever one of those terrible movies. But like it looked real authentic, and I thought that was cool. So that's what that would be my breakdown.
Okay, and that's fair because all those villains again they fit perfectly into that world, and Batman Bruce Wayne specifically, Christian Bale's take on it. So Batman Bruce Wayne is truly on his own hero-wise, right? In this flick. There's no Justice League in this world, at least there's no mention of it. Outside of being alone, he's got his posse of Alfred, Lucius Fox, and Selina at the end there, and Rachel Dawes a little bit because Rachel knows that he's Batman. And Batman has always been able to stand on his own. But I can't help but thinking it would be interesting to see this version of Batman interact with the likes of Superman, Flash, Cyborg. But the question is, could Bale's Batman work with other supers? It's so funny that we're talking about this because I promise you, I put this topic down before Snyder talked about what I'm about to say this week on that podcast. But Snyder mentioned on a podcast, and I didn't know this until this week, that it was possibly on the table for Man of Steel to be set in the Nolan universe. But due to how the Dark Knight Rises ended, Snyder... to him, it didn't make sense. And for those, just to get a quick reminder on how the third film ended, John Blake, a.k.a. John Robin Blake, who was the cop that Batman took under his wing, basically, he was given coordinates of the Batcave, and he found everything, and essentially was taking on the mantle of Batman. And Snyder said, yeah, that could have been cool to see John Blake's Batman go up against Henry Cavill's Superman, but let's be honest, Henry would have just wasted that puny kid. Probably would have even wasted Bale's Batman. But again, it's funny that we're talking about this version of Batman with the potential of JL because of what Snyder said. Ultimately, this was the right decision. Snyder didn't think it made sense for John Blake to take it on. But if we go back and look at Bale himself, not who I consider Nightwing instead to be in Blake, but Bale. Could he coexist with supers and Superman? Not in this world, unfortunately. Batman had to stay on his own in the Nolanverse. Maybe this Earth never had, if this Earth is included in the multiverse and we do see him in Flash, the Flash movie, maybe this Earth never had Krypton die out and Kal-El land in Smallville. Like maybe Kal-El was born to his parents, to Jor-El and Kara. No, not Kara. Mara. Kara-El is Supergirl, right? God, I suck at this. So
Kara Zor-El.
yeah. So he was born to his natural parents on Krypton, never blew up, and he stayed on planet, and all we got was Batman. Um, I just can't see a world that Nolan made to be a good home for the likes of the Space Cops and Green Lanterns, a super-powered alien and Superman, and an Amazon who could essentially flick this Batman into a different multiverse. Um, Bale's Batman wouldn't be prepped for a dark side invasion either, so I'm glad that they kept that stuff separate.
Yeah, me too. I think it just, would take away what that trilogy means, or kind of like the reason behind that. And just like I was saying earlier, it's the most realistic version of Batman that we've seen. And I think you could almost make the argument though that um, it could happen. I mean, it's like in Batman versus Superman, they don't really explain this, and I remember having to read this afterwards. But after 18 months after Superman arrives on Earth and he's fighting Zod, that's where Batman just snaps and just he loses all hope, and that's when he just stops with this whole no killing rule. And so maybe you could say that Bale's Batman spent all these years being Batman and kind of seeing the world and criminals one way, but then this alien comes from out of nowhere that could destroy everything, and if he wanted to, and it just maybe challenges his psyche. I don't think I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument for it, but I'm ultimately glad they didn't. Do I want Christian Bale's Batman to carry on? Absolutely. I hope I get to see him in the Flash film, even if it's just for like a cameo. I think that would be enough for me. I mean, more is always better, but I wouldn't want it to overtake the film, of course. But it's always good when they do that.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, for me, if I wanted to see Bale in the Flash movie, yeah, I kind of want to see Bale, Affleck, and Keaton all on screen together. But because of all the points that I made, and specifically the ones that you made too, I'd be fine if Bale didn't show up in the Flash movie and he wasn't considered to be part of the multiverse. It could be an Elseworlds movie. It could just be kind of off on its own. How well could that mesh? I'd almost rather have Christian Bale come back as an entirely different character in the DCEU, like a villain or something. He's a great method actor, so you could go on. I don't know who he could be. I don't know who he could be. I really haven't given it too much thought. He did join the MCU. He's going to be the villain in Thor: Love and Thunder, but if he's going to come back to the DCEU, I'd like to be something different. So,
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. So, speaking of thoughts, as we are close to wrapping it up today, speaking of thoughts on how different things would look, and again, we kind of talked about this earlier, but how different would The Dark Knight Rises, and I still believe the script was different before Ledger died, but how different would the third and final in the trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises, look if Heath Ledger was still around? What are your thoughts around that, Kyle?
I was actually reading into this, and apparently Christopher Nolan wasn't even sure if he was going to come back for the third film. Wow. And so I don't know if there was any plans, but I think after the success, if Heath Ledger survived, after the success of that Joker and how much he blew up, you couldn't have a third movie without him. It just wouldn't make sense. I think it wouldn't make sense to have him be the center stage again, because you don't want to overdo it. But I could see something to the effect of maybe, holding back Harvey Dent's Two-Face and not making him Two-Face in like The Dark Knight, and maybe just kind of making him into like the third movie opens where you see the Joker in Arkham Asylum, kind of like what I talked about earlier with Joaquin Phoenix's in Joker 2. But you can maybe see like Harvey Dent interrogating him or something like that, trying to get answers, and maybe like the Joker, I don't know, does something where it actually makes him into Two-Face and pushes him over the edge to make him Two-Face or something like that. And then you could kind of see like everything come out of that and maybe introduce a new villain like Bane or somebody else, maybe even Deathstroke. I think Deathstroke could have worked really well in that universe without making it seem tacky. I think it would be kind of hard though, because the Dark Knight really brought the Joker to life, and that was a really, I don't know how you could really progress on from that. So that would have been an interesting take. What do you think? What do you think about maybe what they would do in the third film?
Here's what I essentially thought, and I would have tweaked the story a bit of what they built already. I would have gotten rid of Talia, obviously for all the reasons I said, replaced her with a blonde hair woman with a different name, and specifically blonde haired for the reasons I'll explain. And because again, don't forget, Talia was tricking Bruce the whole time and reveals herself to be Talia Al Ghul at the end, which didn't shock anybody. I think we all saw that coming, especially during the sex scene when they showed her the tattoo on her back. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. So this blonde haired woman who eventually reveals herself to Bruce, just like Talia did at the end, to be Dr. Harleen Quinzel. And as the story goes, that Bane was fed the identity of the Batman by the League of Assassins. He made his way out of the prison and to Gotham to carry out the League's ultimate goal. When he gets there, he approaches the Joker in Arkham Asylum and breaks him out, revealing the identity of the Joker. And Harley Quinn, Bane, Joker kind of aligned to make a little Injustice or Legion of Doom, whatever you want to call it, and reveal themselves to Batman essentially the same way. Like Bane and Harley are together the same way that they reveal that they were working together as Bane and Talia did at the end of Dark Knight Rises. We get some chaos from the Prince and Princess, Joker and Harley Quinn, and the ending could essentially play out the same with the bomb that takes 90 minutes to get out of the city when it's been counting down close to zero for ages. But I would still make Bane the focal point of the Dark Knight Rises, keep his connection essentially to the League of Shadows. I know I keep calling it the League of Assassins because that's what it really is. Keep his connection to the League of Shadows. You could do the Ra's al Ghul cameo again, where he is just in Bruce's memory when Bruce is in the prison. But, you know, I just, if Heath Ledger were still around, I think a Harley Quinn would have worked perfect in this world, and you could have essentially done the same line. But we could talk forever and ever about introducing Harley.
That's a good vision.
Yeah.
That's a good vision. I actually like that, and it's almost kind of like kind of seems more like kind of like one of the Arkham games, you know, where Batman kind of has to face down multiple villains, and you know, each of them maybe has their own territory. And I could definitely see a Harley Quinn in that universe for sure. Maybe not fully fledged like Margot Robbie is, because she's more comic book accurate, but maybe kind of like a, I don't know, like a punk rock Joker. You know how kind of he was like punk rock, maybe like a punk rock Harley Quinn, not over the top, but just like enough. You know what I mean?
Right. It would work. So close to the end here. Let's rank the movie. So rank the trilogy for me, Kyle.
Obviously, The Dark Knight is number 1. I'm going to go ahead and say Batman Begins is number 2, and Dark Knight Rises number 3.
Well said. Mine's a little bit different than yours. Dark Knight Rises is number 3, and this was a tough decision for me. The Dark Knight is number 2, and Batman Begins is number 1 for me. So slightly ahead of The Dark Knight. Reason being is a few reasons. I like Katie Holmes better than I like Maggie Gyllenhaal. I actually just find Maggie Gyllenhaal to be insufferable, mousy voiced, and just a bad actress. And I get it. I think the rumor goes, and I was trying to research this before our podcast, so I wasn't misspeaking, but I think the rumor goes she was married. Katie Holmes, that is, was married to Tom Cruise. He didn't want her to do the movie, and Christopher Nolan in 2016 actually quoted saying how upset he was that Katie couldn't reprise her role. He was happy that Maggie stepped in, but Katie Holmes was a better Rachel Dawes. You know, if you had to have the Rachel Dawes character, she was better at it than Maggie was. Maggie was too super obsessed about Harvey, but at the same time, she loved Bruce kind of. And I don't know, Katie Holmes' version, and again, this could be all script and writing, was much more like in Bruce's face and was holding him accountable for stuff. So Dark Knight, you know, untouchable movie, probably wouldn't change a thing about it. really, when it boils down to it. But I just like Batman Begins a little bit more because I love seeing Bruce's struggle. I love seeing his training by the League of Shadows. I love the reveal from Ra's al Ghul. I love and I feel like he's more Batman in this movie than he is in any of the others. To your point earlier about the brawling that Batman does and the fighting style, yeah, nothing's going to touch the warehouse scene in Batman vs Superman as far as Batman goes. That's like straight out of Arkham. But the brawling style that we see, especially in The Dark Knight Rises, Batman picks people off one by one when he's by the docks, taking down Falcone. And it's the infamous, "Where are you?" When he turns around, it's like, "Right here," or "I'm here." And then he drops and just basically beats the crap out of like 6 or 7 guys, just like Batman does. So all that just kind of barely separates Batman Begins for me and puts it before The Dark Knight. Tough to do, though. Tough to do.
Brilliant point. That's a brilliant scene, by the way.
Oh, brilliant indeed. So last but not least, before we talk about what we're going to do next week, if we could magically make a 4th film to this franchise, how would you do it?
Me, and I know that maybe I'm beating in a dead horse here, but I think a good move would be to do the Court of Owls. And I think mostly because, like I was speaking about earlier, we really get to see Bruce Wayne's psychological struggle given the trauma from his parents' death. And the Court of Owls was revealed to have been the organization that actually killed or ordered Joe Chill to kill Thomas and Martha Wayne. So it was a setup. And I think this would fit really nicely, especially if it was like later on and after the fact, where, and this is kind of how it sets it up in the comic book. Like the story starts out where, Batman's doing something else, and then he just kind of stumbles upon this, and they talk about how he's researched it for years, but it's never panned out, and he never knew about them. And then all of a sudden they exist, and it turns out they killed Thomas and Martha Wayne. Maybe they could alter the talons, maybe they're not like dead assassins, coming back. Maybe they could just be like really well-trained assassins or something. I don't know. I think that might be a good way. I think you could have like thrown Deathstroke in there or Black Mask. I think they could have worked really well too. For sure.
Oh, yeah. In that universe, especially, the Court of Owls, I think, would fit perfectly. And I was thinking about that earlier, actually. And for me, I would still explore that Harley Quinn story with Nightwing, a.k.a. John Blake, because I want him to be Nightwing. Since these movies included multiple villains, the 4th film for Harley could easily be explained as a deranged follower of the Joker and blames Joker, like, missing on Batman. We don't have to see Joker. He could just be mentioned. He's missing. We're not bringing Heath Ledger back, obviously. And Dr. Harleen Quinzel is snapped, basically because she blames Batman for killing him or making him go away. So since Blake starts out trying to be Batman in the movie, then eventually evolves into Nightwing, you see him struggle as Batman. You'd see John Blake really not find his identity because he's trying to live up to what Bruce Wayne left as the legacy of Batman, and he's just not doing it on his own. So, like in the first bit of the movie, I'd have him run in with Harley Quinn. He get his ass beat by Harley because he's never kind of met anything the likes of that. And then you see a quick transition to Nightwing. And I'd actually have, in this movie, I'd have Harley Quinn cripple Barbara Gordon to get involved, to get Oracle involved. But since they include multiple villains, I absolutely would introduce Oswald Cobblepot as a lifelong Gothamite with tons of money in this flick, who's trying to take advantage of the city, rebuilding it and becoming like its new savior. Kind of like how your typical villain does, something like Lex Luthor does, something a politician does. I would have him, I don't know, maybe you could steal the Batman Returns idea, have him run for mayor, maybe have him run for governor or hell, even have Oswald Cobblepot try to run for president or something. They did it with Lex. You can get a little bit involved in there, but of course the Penguin has an agenda of his own. So that's essentially how I would write it.
I just had a thought. Wouldn't it have been better, instead of having Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, but to rather have Harley Quinn for some of the exact same reasons that you explained? Because Catwoman was kind of like forced in there. Like, she really didn't even make sense. But if they put Harley Quinn in there, she could have done really well in fitting into that story. Like the Joker died in Arkham Asylum, they could have done something like that. And maybe she's like, she blames Batman and then she works with Bane. And, that would have been made so much sense to the story and, bring a real prominent female character to the screen and a more interesting one. Not saying Anne Hathaway isn't a bad actress. She's great. I just think, again, they really just didn't do anything. They almost kind of like put her in there just to put her in there.
She's Anne Hathaway, and my wife said this earlier. She's the princess of Genovia, Queen of Genovia, whatever she ends up being in the Princess Diaries. That's essentially who she is. She plays a really good girl next door. She's just not a good Selena Kyle. And
I think it's kind of an insult to Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. We'll say that for sure.
Yeah. Oof, yeah. And hopefully, we'll see Zoe Kravitz give some new life to that role. And again, she already has. So
she will for sure.
Yeah. So all right. So thank you, everybody. I can't thank you enough. I do want to say thank you for the last episode. The time Tom motorboated Hagrid was actually our most popular episode. So that's really freaking cool. We appreciate all the listens. We appreciate the love. Continue. We're on YouTube. We will get some face video on there soon, and I'll show you some of my the brand new dark saber that I've got and Darth Vader's lightsaber. And I mean, there's 50 million videos out there of them, but we can mess around with them anyway. Follow us on social media if you haven't already at Fourth Motherbox on Instagram and the Fourth Motherbox podcast on Facebook. Thank you for listening to the Nolan Trilogy today. Next week, Kyle, Loki's debuting in the middle of the week on June 9th, I believe it is.
Yep.
Let's talk in look, I know that we give shit to the MCU quite a bit, again, because this podcast was sparked by the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, look at the name. We're the Fourth Motherbox, for God's sake. But we need to give credit where credit is due. Let's finally talk a full episode about the MCU. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Should I give the final word?
Yes, sir. Please leave us with some words of wisdom.
All right. The greatest words of wisdom that I can impart is that whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stranger.